Hi guys, Miss Shouter here. We're back with more of The Terrible Two Get Worse by Jory John and Mac Barnett, illustrated by Kevin Cornell. We're on chapter 23, so let's get started. Chapter 23. So let me get this straight. Barry Barkin was still strapped into his glider, pacing anxiously and awkwardly in the underbrush. You come and tell me that you are both pranksters, which is no surprise when it comes to you, Miles Murphy, but it's a considerable surprise in regards to you, Niles Sparks. And while I'm still reeling from this news, you invite me to join the secret society you've set up, the Terrible Twos? The Terrible Two, said Niles. The Terrible Twos is what you call toddlers, said Miles. Right, the Terrible Two, said Barkin. It's a little confusing. It's not really confusing, said Miles. Well, it is, said Barkin. If I'm going to join this little group, and I seriously doubt that I am, we're going to have to do something about that. May I suggest, Barkin paused for effect, the Terrible Threes. You mean the Terrible Three, said Niles. Right, yes, the Terrible Three. We're not changing our name, said Miles. But there'd be three of us. It would just be for one prank, said Miles. We need you to help us get your dad. That's my other problem with this group, said Barkin. Does it have to be a pranking society? Wouldn't it be better if it were, say, a community service organization? No, said Miles. I sort of think of pranking as a community service, said Niles. Ha! Barkin didn't say ha as much as the ha exploded out from deep inside him. He then collected himself and tapped his mustache. That's very interesting. Barkin tramped around some more in the scrub. Boys, I just don't know. Maybe Yanni Valley Science and Letters Academy is better off without me. Let's face it, my father is a far better principal than I ever was. Niles shook his head. Your dad is an awful principal. He's taken the joy out of school. Barkin looked sorrowful. But school should be a place of joy. Exactly, said Miles. And it was when you were principal. Barkin beamed. In what ways did I make school joyful, Miles Murphy? Well, said Miles, you always turned purple when we pulled pranks. Niles shot Miles a stunned glance. Excuse me, said Barkin. Yeah, said Niles. Whenever something would go wrong, you always got angry and turned purple. Barkin was starting to go a little purple right now. Because you cared so much, Miles said. Ah, said Barkin. I see what you mean now, Miles, even though you phrased it in a characteristically clunky manner. I did care. I do care. Your dad doesn't care at all, said Niles. He only cares about power. Yeah, that's true, said Barkin. And I only mostly care about power. We have to get you your job back, said Niles. It's our fault you lost it. We're sorry. Really sorry, said Miles. Barkin gave Miles and Niles a truly warm smile. It's not your fault, boys. It's my father's. But prank him, a pranking principal? Former principal, said Miles. Think of it as a project, said Niles. But I'm terrible at my project, said Barkin. Well, said Miles, what if you're great at being terrible? The Terrible Twos, Barkin mused. Two, said Miles. The Terrible Two, Barkin mused. He considered the proposition. All right, I'm in. Niles smiled. Raise your left hand. Once Barkin was sworn in, the Terrible Two, known to some, at least temporarily, as the Terrible Three, got down to business. Does your dad have any weaknesses? Miles asked. None, said Barkin proudly. Please, said Niles, there must be something. Nope, said Barkin. He is the very model of principal power. You're thinking like a principal, said Miles. You need to think like a prankster. Barkin wrinkled his nose and screwed his eyes shut. This is very difficult, he said. Think, said Niles. Arrgh! Barkin's cry echoed through the quarry. He opened his eyes and gave the boys a sheepish look. There is something, he said. Yeah, said Miles. It's explosive, said Barkin. That's good, said Niles. It's a secret, said Barkin, a family secret. Except my father never told it to me and I am his family. It's something I only learned once I became principal and gained access to my father's permanent record. Miles and Niles leaned forward. My father, said Barkin, does not have a perfect attendance record. Miles rolled his eyes. I don't think that, Barkin continued, his voice hushed. His record was almost perfect, but as my father always said, there is no such thing as almost perfect. On his very last day at Yanni Valley Science and Letters Academy, he was, I don't think I should say. What? Said Niles. He was pantsed by another student, a ruffian named Nick Vella, who for many years ran the sporting goods store in our town. In retrospect, it's clear now why we drove all the way to Lakeville for sneakers, which of course was far out of our way and... Wait, said Niles. You're saying somebody pantsed your dad? I'm afraid so, said Barkin. Apparently he was so mortified he went home early, and he skipped the graduation ceremony. The school had to mail him his diploma. That's why the belt and suspenders, said Miles. I think we can work with this, said Niles. Principal Barkin, how often do you go over to your parents' house? Principal Barkin's eyes widened. Oh, this is terrible, he said. Oh, this is wonderful.